Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my reaction video to the Week 1 win against the Cleveland Browns as we beat them this afternoon 29-10. It's Sunday night here and I am still reveling in the performance that we saw today. The team played great all around. Before we get too excited, obviously we have to mention that it was against the Cleveland Browns, probably one of the worst teams in the NFL. But we did exactly what we needed to do against a bad football team, and that's beat them in every phase of the game, and that's what we did today. Obviously, the big story of the game is Carson Wentz, and I just have to gush on him for a minute because I thought he looked fantastic today. And really, when you look at the plays he was making, it just looked like he belonged there. There was a lot of concern that is he going to be overmatched, having only ever played at the FCS level, and only having played in one half of one preseason game. So that was really a concern everyone had coming in, but I think he showed that he belongs there. He clearly looked comfortable the whole time. There were some times where he probably took some hits he didn't need to take, but for the most part, he looked really solid. He got rid of the ball sometimes when he had to, and there was even one time I remember he took a sack where, you know, some quarterbacks might have tried to throw it away or something like that, but recognizing that, you know, losing a few yards is better than, you know, potentially throwing a ball up there that could get intercepted. So I thought he showed great judgment. I thought he showed great poise. And the two touchdown passes were just things of beauty. The way he placed those balls, the way he threw those balls was just really amazing. They were put right where the defender was no way the defender was going to be able to get to it, placed right where the receiver needed to, so the receiver ran right under it. And it also showed some trust that he has in his wide receivers. I'm specifically seeing in the second touchdown to Nelson Agholor. Nelson Agholor was still just starting into his route when Carson threw that ball up there, and he just believed in his guy that he was going to go up there and get the ball against even one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL in Joe Hayden. So I think really when you look at it, he just showed a lot of confidence and a lot of confidence in his teammates as well. And I think they're going to respond to that. And I think ultimately this is only going to help further gel him with the team and allow for his progression as he goes forward to really be able to become the leader of this unit and become the quarterback of the future. And everything I saw today only leads me to believe even more that we got the right guy and we're going to be set now for hopefully the next several years with a good solid guy that's going to be behind center all the time. I want to talk about what I thought was the turning point of the game, and that really was the safety that we got at the beginning of the second half. Towards the end of the first half, and even the Browns' first drive of the second half, it looked like maybe the tides were starting to turn a little bit. They had scored a touchdown in the second quarter, and then they came right out. They had the ball first in the second half, drove down, got the field goal, and got within 3 points. And after we had gotten the early lead, it looked like things were going to be relatively easy. And then all of a sudden that happened, and you start thinking, oh no, are we going to start to fall apart here? And that's when the play that happened that I think really turned things around. It was a 3-point game. They had the ball deep in their territory, and you can see behind me, this is the snap as it's starting to go over RG3's head. And when you look at how things were lined up, I have a belief as to why I think this happened. Specifically, if you look at the formation that they had, Fletcher Cox was lined up right over the center. You can see that behind me. He was lined up right over center, and it really, I think, ended up making the center, because Fletcher Cox is such a dominating lineman, I think it made the center sort of nervous and want to try and get rid of the ball so he was going to be able to get off and get on his block and make sure that they were going to be able to get the protection in place that was needed. And that's, of course, when everything went wrong. And I think really when we take a look at this team, Fletcher Cox is someone that really has shown that he can be a game changer. And he showed that again today. He was clearly the best player on our defensive unit. I really think we're set on the defensive side of the ball as well. We have a couple holes that we've still got to fill, but for the most part, I think that he really showed why he is one of the elite defensive tackles in the league. The only hole that I really see is in the secondary, and once again, the one big pass that we gave up was just the fact, a secondary that wasn't even looking back for the ball, because any secondary that's looking back for that ball is able to bat that thing down, because the receiver even had to make an adjustment on it. So it wasn't that the ball was thrown in the perfect place. It was that the receiver was the one looking for the ball and the defenders weren't. So if we get some better corners, I think our defensive unit is going to be one of the best. Once again, I really believe in Jim Schwartz and what he's doing with that defense. So I think that can really help out a team that is developing a rookie quarterback, because there isn't going to be the pressure that we're going to have to go out there and score 31 points a game. There are going to be games that maybe the defense can sort of win a game for us, where we only end up scoring, 13 or 14 points. So I think that safety really was the turning point of the game, and the next possession, I think, really sort of emphasized that and just sort of put the game away. We got the ball back, and as we're driving down, we get stuck at the 40-yard line, 4th and 4. And Doug Peterson makes a very gutsy call to go for it. A lot of people would have decided to, maybe try a long field goal there, although, Caleb Sturgis had missed earlier in the game, so I don't think his confidence was that high in Sturgis. And with Donnie Jones, they can always try and punt and pin the team deep, because he's one of the best punters in football. But Doug Peterson, I think, realized that, hey, this was a turning point in the game, the safety. If we can score here, we can probably put this game away. And that's exactly what happened. So you saw they ended up going for it, making it where Carson Wentz makes a great throw under pressure. And ultimately, in the very next play, then they are able to make the touchdown and really seal that deal. And I think at that point, there was no doubt who was going to win that game. So I really viewed that as sort of the turning point, and I really have to give Doug Peterson a lot of credit for that. I even tweeted out right after that, I don't know that I would have made that same call. It was a gutsy call, but so he needs to get some credit for that. And I think that really sort of cemented that turning point in that part of the game where really we ended up putting it away. Because the way our defense had started playing at that point, I don't think there was any way they were going to be able to catch up to us. And we showed that the offense was going to be able to put points on the board. So I think that the Browns sort of really got demoralized as a result of sort of those two plays, and what that ended up resulting in, basically a 9-point difference from where they were only down 3 to being down 12. And that was a much more daunting task from them to come back from. My only real hang-up on Doug Peterson's game was the fact that when we were starting to lose control of the game in the second quarter, and I think the Browns were really starting to establish themselves, and even in the beginning of the third quarter, I think we got away from the run game a little bit too much. And Carson Wentz was having a great day, and I think that maybe, Doug was starting to buy in a little bit too much to that and sort of got away a little bit from the running game. I hope that's not shades of Andy. But ultimately, he did get back to the running game to sort of finish the game out, and really showed how a team could dominate on the ground and dominate time of possession. The fact that we ended up dominating time of possession the way we did was really a sign of how this team is going to be a lot different from what we've seen in the last 3 years. This is going to be a much more traditional team in that sense, that they're going to try and grind it out at the end and really wear the team's defense down and control the ball and control the clock and not let that other team get out there to try and come back in a game. So really, I think Doug Peterson showed some real good things in terms of what he was doing in setting up the running game and giving Carson Wentz just enough opportunity to really show himself. He went deep a couple times, but for the most part, most of the passes were sort of underneath, crossing patterns, stuff that he was going to be able to, I think, complete relatively easily. And that got his confidence up, and that can only mean good things, hopefully, going forward. The interesting thing is going to be to see is what happens now. Defenses are obviously going to see this game film, and they're going to be able to adjust now. And they're going to be able to see what Carson Wentz's tendencies are, and we'll be able to really see, in the next few weeks, how Carson Wentz is able to handle that. This was really the unknown. Granted, he really didn't have much work in the preseason, but that also meant that the defense really had nothing to look at in terms of seeing some of his tendencies. Now that he's got a full game, teams will be able to start to do that, and as it gets deeper and deeper into the season, they're only going to have more and more film to work off of to try and see what his tendencies are, and then we'll see if he's really able to continue to make the adjustments that a pro quarterback's going to need to be able to have prolonged success. But all in all, I really am excited from what I saw today. I have to give the team an A all around. And I think we really showed what you have to do when you're playing a bad team like the Cleveland Browns. You've got to get on them from the jump and then just really never give up. And that's what ended up happening. And we sort of just drove that home the whole game. And kudos to Doug Peterson. And obviously really excited about Carson Wentz. Leading into next week's game against the Chicago Bears, who showed me a little something against the Houston Texans. They ended up losing, but I thought Houston was going to have a little easier time with that than they did. So that'll be interesting to see exactly how that comes about next week. And of course, John Fox is a defensive coach, so we'll see what he has in store for Carson and the Eagles offense. So I'll check in next weekend with my preview for that Monday night game against Chicago. But until then, fly Eagles fly.